It was a dreary London evening when Dr. John Watson arrived at 221B Baker Street. The rain pelted against the window panes, casting a rhythmic patter that only seemed to emphasize the coziness of the room within. Sherlock Holmes, his keen eyes scanning a pile of documents strewn across the coffee table, was in his element, oblivious to the weather outside.
Ah, Watson, just in time.
What's the matter, Holmes?
Watson asked, shaking off his wet coat and settling into his chair.
We have a rather intriguing case on our hands, one that involves both literary intrigue and a rather curious theft.
Watson's interest was piqued.
Do tell.
Last evening I received a rather distressing visit from an old friend of mine, Professor Jonathan Larkin.
A Dickens manuscript. No wonder it's valuable.
Yes, and therein lies the crux of the problem. The manuscript vanished from Larkin's study under circumstances that can only be described as baffling. The room was locked from the inside and there were no signs of forced entry.
Holmes replied.
It was an unpublished work by the late Charles Dickens, a manuscript that was believed to have been lost forever. Larkin had managed to acquire it through rather clandestine means. It was intended for a special edition publication to celebrate Dickens's legacy. I believe it is time we pay a visit to Professor Larkin and his study.
They arrived at Professor Larkin's residence, an imposing Victorian house in Bloomsbury, and were soon ushered into the professor's study. The room was a clutter of books and papers, with the desk positioned against the far wall. The study door, as Holmes had described, was locked from the inside. Holmes began his examination methodically. He scrutinized the lock, the window, and the desk, all while Watson observed.
It seems that our thief was quite familiar with the layout of the room.
Holmes noted, examining a small dust mark on the floor near the window.
This mark suggests that someone may have maneuvered a chair or some other object to reach the window.
Holmes approached the desk and noted a series of peculiar indentations on the surface.
What have we here?
Holmes mused, carefully measuring the indentations with his magnifying glass.
It appears that someone used this desk as a platform.
Could they have used it to reach the window?
Precisely. But the question remains, how did they unlock the study door from within and then lock it again after the theft?
Holmes turned his attention to the window, which was slightly ajar.
It's quite elementary.
He said, pulling out a length of string.
This window has a latch on the inside that can be manipulated with a simple tool. With a bit of dexterity, one could use a length of string to pull the latch from the outside, open the window, and then retrieve the manuscript.
Holmes tied a small knot in the string and demonstrated how it could be used to operate the latch.
Our thief must have been aware of this mechanism. The study door was locked from the inside to mislead any investigation. This is rather telling.
He said, picking up one of the letters.
A correspondence between Professor Larkin and a rare book dealer named Reginald Ford. It appears that Ford was deeply interested in acquiring the manuscript before it was stolen.
Ford could be our suspect.
Indeed, it would be prudent to pay Mr. Ford a visit.
The following day, Holmes and Watson found themselves at Reginald Ford's bookshop in the heart of London. Ford, a thin, fidgety man with a nervous demeanour, greeted them with barely concealed anxiety.
Good day, Mr. Ford. We have a few questions regarding the missing manuscript.
I know nothing about any theft.
When questioned, Ford claimed to know nothing about the theft, but Holmes's probing questions revealed inconsistencies in his story.
Your story doesn't quite add up, Mr. Ford.
A search of Ford's shop revealed the missing manuscript hidden behind a false panel in one of his bookshelves.
All right, I confess. I took the manuscript. I had hoped to acquire it through less scrupulous means and then sell it for a profit, but my greed got the better of me.
His plan had been thwarted by his own greed and Holmes's sharp investigative skills. The manuscript was returned to Professor Larkin, who was immensely grateful for its recovery. Thank you, Holmes. I can't express how relieved I am to have it back. The case of the missing manuscript had been resolved, thanks to Holmes's keen observation and deductive prowess. As Holmes and Watson returned to Baker Street, the detective remarked,
It is always fascinating how even the most seemingly mundane details can unravel the most intricate mysteries.
Indeed, Holmes, and once again your powers of deduction have proven to be extraordinary.
Holmes simply nodded, already immersed in the next puzzle that awaited him in the quiet confines of their beloved Baker Street home.